the state of the nation, a whole lot seems to be happening. Well, yes, indeed. Well, we're joined this morning by Mr. Akin Osuntokun, who is a former political advisor to former President Obasanjo, and he's also was leader, the head in NAN, and member editorial board of this day. Thank you for coming this morning, sir. Well, heavy hearts for a whole lot of people, and with the way things are unfolding this minute, I mean, you always will hear people express their frustration almost every time that these kind of scenarios happen. But the way these things happen, the way the authorities respond to it, may not exactly meet the expectation of the people out there in terms of the kinds of steps they want them to take. But the thing is, they will always say, we're doing what we can, the authorities at the moment. But from your analysis of what seems to be going on, perhaps we'll start with security of the country. What are your thoughts now?
The most important thing for Nigerians, both the leaders and the followers, is that people don't lose their nerves. We don't get too negatively excited, so that we don't do or say something that may inadvertently play, to the crisis situation on ground. Terrorism is not an exact science. You cannot add 2 plus 2 and get 4. Well, people have to project their frustrations or despair, on something. So to that extent, the government is there. Now, I will not join people to criticize and condemn the government too much on its response to the phenomena that is going on. It's so elusive, terrorism is so elusive, and it's a difficult thing. The prayer should be, don't let it start. Look at the United States, as recent as 2009 December, a plane nearly exploded, on top of Detroit in Michigan. Now, this is America we are talking about, that has been, confronting that challenge for years, and it nearly happened there. So it is here, and attempts. It's a very, even in terms of being a terrorism phenomenon, attempts to actually formulate it is a bit difficult, in that it is not tied to, in the recent history of Nigeria, the comparisons that you can have really it doesn't serve a lot of purpose. Like the militancy in the Niger Delta, you could put down your finger on the logic of what they want, and there seems to be a commonality, among the elite and the fringe group, on the sources of their grievance. So once you address that, the militancy tapered off. The same thing with OPC. OPC was a creation of the annulment of the June 12th election, and in particular. And so, of course, once you were able to address that, and it was not something that it was OPC alone that felt aggrieved, you could see that opinion leaders and the elites in the Southwest almost felt the same thing. So but here we are with Boko Haram. We don't know. I mean, you can only speculate and insinuate that, okay, what is the specific grievance that the activities are targeted towards? Now, the elites in the north seems not to share anything with Boko Haram. And to that extent, it becomes more difficult when Boko Haram says it wants to Islamize Nigeria or fighting for what this is what has really make it. But again, we may want to see all this as part of building a nation, of nationhood. That is. Some
Nigerians actually share your views on this particular matter. Even this day, some of the writers have actually written on that matter, specifically when the former President Olusegun Obasanjo went to see if he could actually kick off a kind of dialogue between the family of the slain leader of the sect as well as other members. Even though people criticized his actions then, I remembered Simon Kolawole actually wrote to say it was the way to go. So if truly we to look at that, and now we get to hear stories and read in the papers that this day was hit because of their reports, which people are still trying to piece together and find out where they have gone wrong in that regard. What can we then say? Because it, when people discuss Boko Haram, people really would be very careful because they don't even know what they want. So, is there any publication where you have done otherwise? Because now they have actually released a report to say that you haven't been too fair.
Well, you mentioned Simon Kolawole, and the pin that what he said was that it was an afterthought. The reason given by those who did the attack. Well, when it happened, when the attack on this day happened, what I asked myself was that within the context of grievances that the Boko Haram itself had laid down, in what way as this day contravene or transgress against, and I could not find any. I mean, isolate this day, that other papers have not done. I could not put my finger. Really, to give whoever did the attack the benefit of, I couldn't. I even see this day more as more of a very liberal paper, in terms of, views that I expressed there. So it was. This is the kind of but the problem seems now to get compounded. That you have it seems possible now that Boko Haram is said as fractionalized. You have 2 or 3 factions, so the agendas may not now be the same, or you could now find a criminal organization taking on the franchise of Boko Haram under the cover of Boko Haram to do what it wants to do. This is the kind of problematic that we have confronted.
Yeah, but we also have people who part of bottling up or trying to express their frustrations is the fact that they think that the authorities can actually do and have the capacity or capability to do much more than they are seen to be doing. In other words, if they are seen, they don't have to even tell Nigerians specifically what they're doing differently to sort this thing out. It remains to be seen from a whole lot of people's perspective what strategy, what step is in place.
Well, if the government tells you the strategy that is in place, then it must be a very bad government. I mean, if you want to contain a security situation and you make your strategy, you make it public, that's the most stupid thing you can do. Well, you see, let's put the question this way, right? The fact that nothing is happening, if a society or a community is enjoying peace, you take it for granted. That doesn't mean that efforts are not being made to undermine or destabilize you. My own belief now is that I think the governments must have made a lot of effort to contain it. And if they have not done that, things will have gotten much, much worse than we have now. You could also see it in a pattern of attacks. It's like now somebody trashing the darkness in the dark. What has this got to do with government? Or you want to levy against the government of Nigeria? Now BUK is there, the students, for God's sake. So you can see this element of almost maniacal, trashing in the darkness.
Yeah, but much as people, Nigerians need to support, of course, whichever authority at whatever level in tackling terrorism, because that is not what any country wants. But again, you also need to ask yourself, where does the confidence come from and where should they place it? Because if you look at the history of investigations from the police in this country, and then you say, well, if they will investigate this matter and people are supposed to wait for results, the previous ones, we know what has happened with them. So people actually are battling with that. Do we trust the authorities to investigate this matter and get to the bottom of it?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have any choice. That is the government in place. But as I said, I will give them the benefit. I will give the government the benefit of the doubt. But one thing you also have to know is that very unfortunate for Nigeria, security containment, especially of this dimension, emergency dimension, is the cost is prohibitive. I mean, that is the last thing Nigeria needs now in terms of allocation of resources. I don't know how much was budgeted for security, but it must have escalated beyond. Well, this is a situation in which other needs, are crying for attention. But what I want, I take it for granted, and I believe to some extent that the government has gotten a handle on the problem. Whether that will lead to, I'm not so optimistic that it will then, the problem will not taper off. It will continue in one form or the other. Maybe not as big in magnitude and scope as it has been before. But again, I see this also, you can see it as part of, nationhood, the throes of birth that the nation has to go through. What you pray for, I mean, it's not for you not to have challenge, but for you to have the ability, to cope and grapple with it. In the process, if Boko Haram is doing what it's doing, and other major problems or crises are getting resolved, maybe like the power situation, maybe in terms of infrastructural, we'll just keep forging ahead.
Is that possible? Because that's what people have been trying to come to terms with, that knowing full well that we have this at hand, definitely it might just affect all the developments that the country should have witnessed by now. So with all of this being in place, is it quite possible for the government to concentrate and give the needed developmental, should I say, support that the country needs?
Yeah, because what you have to do is then to expand your capacity or ability, as a government. If an extra challenge comes in, you have to develop extra capacity to grapple with it. What I'm saying is that, if you ask me, I think the intensity and the capacity of Boko Haram to inflict damage or attack the Nigerian society is a little bit less. It's less than what it used to be. Yeah. So something must have happened, to make that, to explain that present situation.
Why do you say, I mean, first of all, you describe this as the nation being in the throes of giving birth to a nation. I mean, one would ask, do you think in this particular case that the midwives are capable, or do you think that this mother would die in the pangs of labor? That's one. But why do you also believe that, that Boko Haram's capabilities have reduced?
Well, in terms of, if you look at the pattern of the way the attack has been going on, and the intensity or the depth of it, it's not as, and the targets being chosen, they seem to be the soft targets now, and in Maiduguri you hear more of, the JTF overpowering them rather than vice versa. But you made reference to the throes of birth. The problem we have is Nigerians, all of us, we externalize, the nationhood building. You are one of it. It's not something that you are part of it. So it's a responsibility that you have to assume. Every